The challenge, the opportunity to connect. The 1960s, a time of imagination and change, a time of anger and fear. The 1960s, a program called Challenge.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen.
Looked at our connections, our divisions, through the lens of faith. Nearly 60 years later, during these challenging times, we'll take a new look at our divisions, our connections, in a new program called Challenge 2.0. COVID has not disappeared, but the wide availability of vaccinations has reduced the level of hospitalizations and deaths in most states across the country. Life in some ways is beginning to resemble that of pre-COVID America, but with some important challenges. Meeting those challenges successfully demands thought, not simple reaction. The Interfaith Amigos join us to provide some wisdom and some guidance. Well, I'm very grateful that we have the Interfaith Amigos joining us as we look at this topic. Pastor Don Mackenzie, Rabbi Ted Falcon, and Imam Jamal Rahman, all of the Interfaith Amigos. Thank you, each of you, for joining us and giving us some perspective on this important issue right now.
Our pleasure. It's our pleasure, Jeff.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You know, as we look to have this discussion and do this topic, I think we have to acknowledge that we're in a very different country now than we were a year ago. Vaccinations against COVID are available. Medical evidence shows that they work very well, some better than others, and even against the variants. Though there's some continuing investigation on that. It's possible to go shopping, it's possible to attend schools and concerts, athletic events. And I had to reflect when I was thinking about this, you can even walk into just about any supermarket and find bathroom tissue on the shelves, which we couldn't do just a year ago. But the pace of vaccinations has slowed, and as a result, cases, at least in some areas of the country, are rising. Could we begin by asking each of you how you view the situation, and how you're choosing to respond to that?
Okay. Yeah. Thank you, Jeff. It's been quite a time, of course, for everybody in the world. No one has been immune from the devastating effects of the pandemic. And I've tried to remember something somebody said to me once when he said, Don, what's the opportunity in this problem? Because I think I've learned, and we've learned together, that every problem does contain opportunities. And I think as things got started in the spring of 20, I began to feel like a curtain had been pulled up, showing us things that ordinary life had been able to help us not to see. And I think that those things have to do with all kinds of injustice, racial injustice, economic injustice, the destruction of the planet, the ways in which we are unable to help each other cope with life's problems. Instead of polarized or hurting each other. And of course, these are things that religion is concerned about, but has not been able to cooperate in addressing, which again is why we feel interfaith understanding and cooperation is such an important goal for the world right now. So I think that in Minneapolis, where I live now, there's been a considerable racial unrest for very good reasons. And it's an odd thing because I think Minneapolis was a long time viewed as kind of an ideal place that didn't have so many problems, but that was a superficial thing. That underneath that there has been, it's been a hard place for a person of color to live. It's been a hard place for a Jew or a Muslim to live, but it's changing. And as someone said recently, we're redefining what it means to live in Minnesota. And that's crucial. I mean, it's not just a Scandinavian thing anymore. It's really multicultural, interfaith, and so forth. And that's very exciting and holds a lot of promise. But my prayer is that we will not forget what has happened here in Minneapolis, both in terms of racial and economic injustice, and also our response to the pandemic in terms of vaccination, which there's still a polarity. I mean, and that's what we were talking about last week with the patriarchy thing. We still cannot seem to understand how it feels to be the other. And it's hard to know quite where to go with that, but certainly our work has to do with that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if I may just, take one specific issue, Brother Don mentioned vaccination. I'm fully vaccinated, but I do get people, and surprisingly, you don't expect them to be talking like that, who don't want to get vaccinated. So how do you deal with this decision? What advice do you give? I remember the words of the Prophet Muhammad, who said, you know, no matter who tells you what, elders, pundits, experts, listen. Take it to heart. But the ultimate decision is consult your heart.
Mm-hmm.
Consult your heart. So that's a very important point. So here I'm saying that I don't want to idolize religious views or political views, because these are always subject to interpretation or misinterpretation.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to idolize science also, because that is also evolving. So I just give the example of, yes, I must listen to all sides. So why have I chosen to become vaccinated? Because ultimately, it serves the common good. It is of service to others. It is of service to your parents, to those in your family who are vulnerable. So that is the advice I give. And this is something which we are continuously dealing with. But that advice about consult your heart in a humble, sincere, authentic way, for me, is very critical.
It is really clear that we are living through something that is extraordinary. It seemed to me that that COVID brought a clear message. Beyond our vulnerability, it brought a message relating to the consequences of destroying biodiversity,
Mm-hmm.
which leads to proliferation of viral contamination. It has demonstrated an interconnection of all the people on the planet. You know, it still is a marvel to me when a variant is discovered at a particular place, and there's this idea that it'll stay there. And nothing stays there. I mean, the virus seems to spread like an idea. The virus is no respecter of race or ethnicity or language or culture or age. I mean, which is a clear demonstration of our interconnectedness.
As we talk about vaccinations and masks, there's disagreement, and as you said, a sharing of views, perhaps different perspectives, different data, but there is some profound anger that's been evidenced and pushback. And I wonder, is that about wearing masks and vaccination, or is there some deeper reason for that? What's your feeling about that?
As I hear people who do not wish to be vaccinated speaking, what I'm hearing is that they feel the invitation or encouragement to be vaccinated as an impingement on their own personal freedom. And I think that's a reflection of the polarity that we're experiencing in the United States at the moment. As Ted said, it's not just fascinating, it's tragic, it's painful. Because, you know, we're in a situation where there's very little certainty, with the exception of the fact that the vaccine appears to be saving lives at the moment. I feel, this is my feeling alone, that in order to have anything that we might call public health, getting vaccinated is a moral issue. There's no guarantee that it's going to be a good thing in the long run. It could kill everybody who's been vaccinated. We don't know. But right now it's saving lives. And I don't think we have any other way to move forward except to take the path of vaccination. And the three of us have done that. How do we try to understand how it feels to be the person who doesn't want to be vaccinated? That's crucial. Otherwise, it's just going to be us against them forever.
Why don't we even look more basic than that, just that of wearing masks or maintaining separation?
My feeling is that that masks are important. They appear to be most effective if they're worn by somebody who has who is able to transmit the virus.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so it's again, and this is actually very much in line with what Imam Jamal was saying about acting in ways that protect the other, that contribute to the greater good. I personally am not comfortable going into closed spaces. When I'm around anything that looks like that or that is close to that, I am masked.
Mm-hmm.
I carry a mask with me always. And I suspect that in the culture we live in, there are so many people who feel in so many ways powerless to impact their environment, to impact their economic status, to impact their employment, to impact their relationships in positive ways, that they are drawn to find things they can do to feel like they are exerting some kind of control, exerting some kind of agency, exerting some kind of show of responsibility, you know, and I think it gets confused. I think it gets confused.
And if I may extend what Brother Ted is saying, by wearing the mask, social isolation, you know, some people are getting very tired, you know, as has been said by both my brothers, depressed, fatigued by just looking at the computer. And they're really missing this human palpable connection. You know, I was reading an article in the New York Times that was talking about joy and what people are missing by not interacting physically with others. And they were saying research shows that, you know, we're missing that laughter. And when people are in groups of friends or family members, they laugh 5 times more than when they're alone. Then they're missing the joy of what is called, this is a sort of a sociology term, they're missing the joy of collective effervescence, which comes by meeting other people. So I can understand the impatience among people to want to do that, but yet we have to be very careful.
We often hear people say they can't wait for life to get back to the way it was before we even heard about COVID. Is that really desirable? Are we missing some important lessons?
I think there's a danger of doing that. I think Brother Ted said that one of the problems with our awareness is that the destruction of the environment is making it possible for more viruses to be made available to humanity. And I think what we want to recover is the sense of being together, as my brothers have just said, that the experience of the interconnectedness of all being is what we've been missing. Even though we've had Zoom to see people, we haven't been palpably near people.
But even those who are often most verbal about ways in which we have been acting in destructive ways wind up flying as much or more than others. You know, it's like we don't want to have our freedom curtailed, even though we know that a lot of what we are doing is contributing to the very problems we talk about and profess to be deeply concerned about. Water. Water is a problem. And yet the ways in which we keep the water running, you know, well, it's easier. Well, you know, I mean, the lack of ability to get together, as Pastor Don was noting, and as Imam Jamal talked about, has been detrimental to human beings. It also offered the opportunity for an awakening to a spiritual connection. And I think there have been growing numbers of people who actually have taken advantage of that and appreciate that. It offered the opportunity for us to do a reset. And really the question is, what in our own lives are we willing to reset? What is it that are ways that I'm contributing? Like, how many times do I take a ferry and travel to do a 20-minute talk? You know, exactly what are the consequences of the way I have been living my life? Was it just, well, it's my freedom. It's what I do.
Maybe I'll just echo what my brothers have said. You know, when COVID happened, really the sky seemed so much more blue.
Yeah.
Grass so much more green. Wonderful flora, fauna, animals running around and most of all, my heart felt so much more hopeful, because I thought, wow, we can really, from the changes I saw, the physical changes, it gave me inspiration, hope that we could actually reverse this loss of biodiversity, ecosystem collapse, climate change. That was, one realization I had. We can still do it if we really change our lifestyle. The second thing, as my brothers have said, for me, it also gave time to become aware of priorities, of the difference between form and essence, not to get enmeshed too much in trivialities. You know, I love poetry. So I'm thinking of this Rumi poetry where he says, you know, no matter what plans you make, titles you acquire, riches you accumulate, the thief will come from the unguarded side. Therefore, Jamal, focus, invest in that which can never be stolen. Love, compassion, capacity for forgiveness, togetherness. And the other poetry, which has more meaning now, I've always quoted it, but after COVID, it means much more, where again, a mystic says, Jamal, give up this 10 days of famousness. Give up this 10 days of famousness and revolve with me around the sun that never sets. Become aware of the mysteries and the beauty of life. Be present.
As we begin to reemerge, is there a sense of reentry pain, of encountering other people? And what do we need to recognize in ourselves, and how do we need to be gentle with ourselves as we start to interact with more people and re-enter everyday society?
I think that's a great question, Jeff. I think we all have to keep in mind to be sensitive to what the particular needs are of everyone we encounter. And to honor, like there are some people who are comfortable hugging like they used to. There are some people who are not comfortable hugging. There are some people who want to shake hands. There are some people who don't want to shake hands. There are some people who want to talk, you know, get face to face. There are some people who want to maintain some kind of distance. There are some people who want to get together with large groups. There are some people who want to remain with smaller groups. You know, so this gives a great opportunity to open to with as much sensitivity as is possible.
Well, I think it's critical to be flexible. You know, on this show, I've repeated this many, many times. My favorite insight, my brothers know by heart, blessed are the flexible, or they will never be bent out of shape. So if I can remember that, be flexible, be sincere, and be understanding. You might be against a person's behavior because it doesn't conform to your behavior or what your beliefs are. But as you connect with them, as you relate to them, go beyond their behavior. Know that beyond their behavior is their being, which is sacred. It's Christ nature, Buddha nature, Elohim nature. And just this understanding helps me to connect in a more authentic, more loving, and a more compassionate way.
I think one of the invitations of religion or spiritual paths in general is spiritual practices, prayer, meditation, and so forth, because of the ways in which that can help us find the center. And being at that center gives us the capacity to empathize, to forgive, to have compassion, to want to know how it feels to be the other. And I think recently in one of our conversations, my brothers have pointed out that so many of the people who engage in spiritual practices don't do it for any reason other than to feel better, which we all want to do. But what those people don't seem to understand is that feeling better then gives us the opportunity to find ways to contribute to the common good, to recognize that interconnectedness of all being. That is one of the main messages of all spiritual paths.
In our book, we say, Brother Don, that spiritual practice is critical, because if we want to overcome social injustices, we have to overcome our biases, our stereotyping of the other. This requires spiritual practices. If we want to overcome planetary degradation, we talked about climate change, ecosystem collapse, loss of biodiversity. As we always say, it is not about those. It is about the fact that we are selfish, we are greedy, and we have apathy. That is the source of these problems of planetary degradation. That requires spiritual practices.
We hear some people say, well, how could God allow this pandemic to happen? How have you respond? How would you respond to that?
Oh, you wonder why we're quiet now. We're each of us asking God right now so that the transmission can be clear.
Yes.
That's such an interesting question. Human beings have this interesting capacity to question deity's role in when bad things happen, but not when good things happen, which is interesting. It's like we want to take credit for the good stuff. Well, obviously that happened because I'm worthy or I earned it. They recognized it, but not for the negative. Oh, this is happening because we're destroying the biodiversity. This is happening because we're not being honest with each other. This is happening because people are covering up and afraid to reveal what's going on. This is, no, why is God doing this? I think the question itself is the problem. It projects an external deity, which is really another one of the crimes of the patriarchal traditions, which has a tendency to operate according to authority rather than according to inner conscious awareness and the opening of the heart and of mind, an opening to the essential identity that we carry rather than what is asked of us, and we either will get punished or rewarded depending on if we observe correctly. So I think the question itself reflects a radical, I would say infantile, but a radical misinterpretation of spiritual reality. Spiritual traditions in each of our faiths. I mean, the universal spiritual awareness is clearly that the presence is right here. It is acting as the essential identity of everything. of every being. We are not being watched by some external father, mother. We've got an internal parent, an internal presence, an internal being.
So maybe I'll end this by the story which I've repeated here also, which I love, I take to heart. When a Bedouin was asked, do you believe in God? And the Bedouin answered, you mean the God who sent me afflictions, poverty, illnesses, made me wander from country to country to country? But as he spoke, he entered into a state of ecstasy. That is the mystery.
As always, it's a great gift to have each of you join us. Thank you so much for being a part of this conversation.
It's
Thank
our
you.
pleasure, Jeff. Thank you.
And to each of you watching, thank you for joining us. And we hope that you'll join us on the next episode of Challenge 2.0. Thank you very much.
If you've enjoyed this program, found our conversations to be informative, entertaining, and thought-provoking, and the vision inspiring of people from different backgrounds who can disagree without being disagreeable, perhaps you might consider supporting our program with a contribution. Your support will not only help our program continue, it will also support the broader efforts of Paths to Understanding, our supporting parent nonprofit organization.